Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jai Hind, Namaskar. So, I hope I am properly audible and visible to all of you. I hope कि मैं आप सबको properly audible और visible हूँ. Good morning. So, I welcome you all to this session and आज के सेशन में जो टॉपिक्स हम लोग डिस्कस करेंगे, वी आर गोइंग टू सी two different articles with respect to the part which is related to climate. Okay, here basically both these articles are related to the climate finance. यहाँ पे दो आर्टिकल है और दोनों ही क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस को लेकर है. तो वी आर गोइंग टू लुक इनटू दीज टू टॉपिक्स. We are going to look into these two topics. We are going to talk about it, that what is being suggested, what is the level of financing in India, what is needed, etc. ये सभी टॉपिक है जिसको हम लोग डिस्कस करेंगे. And then we will also discuss about this one question. I have last day given you this one question. Discuss the merit and demerit of judicial holidays in India. Okay. So then after we will discuss about this answer writing also. We are going to talk about this one topic also. Okay. So let's start with it. Let's start with it. So here we are talking about climate finance. This is one of the most challenging part. Let us first try to understand it, that why this is relevant, why this is important. What is the background of it? What is the background of it? Let us try to examine this. Okay. So what we see that right now, we see that the climate change has brought in, it has introduced several challenges. So it has introduced several challenges. It has brought in several challenges, and now what we need to do, we need to adapt according to it. We need to do some mitigation of it. Okay, we need to reduce its impact, and we also need to adapt according to the changing situations. Okay, we need to adapt and mitigate. There is a need of adaptation, and there is a need of mitigation. So we need both adaptation and mitigation. Adaptation, we need adaptation according to the changing situation. That if there is too much of heat, we need heat tolerant crops. We need proper we also need to ensure that the industries, they are providing ample amount of cooling period to labors, and they have to also maintain productivity. Then we have to also go towards clean energy, green energy. We have to look towards green industry. So these are many things. These are many of the things which are there, which we need to do in case of our country also. And whenever we are talking about all these things, there is a requirement of fund. There is a requirement of money. There is a requirement of fund. So climate funding is one of the very important component. Climate funding is very important component. Okay. Now, here, if we talk about this, what is being said here? Just to give you one thing. Okay. Like, how much money do we need? How much money do we require? The thing is, how much money is required? How much money is required? Let us first talk about this. But how much money is required? Okay. So you may be aware about the NDC. Are you aware what is NDC? There is one term called as NDC. Nationally Determined Contribution under the Paris Treaty. So are you aware about it? That what is this NDC? I think you all might be aware about it. That what is NDC? We have made goal of creating carbon sink. We have made goal of green energy. We have made goal of the transition towards renewables, reducing emission intensity. So there is one thing called as NDC. Suppose that if we have to complete it, if we have to achieve it, to achieve this, there is a requirement. There is a requirement of roughly around, okay, roughly around $2.5 trillion. There is a requirement of almost 2.5 trillion rupees. There is a requirement of almost 2.5 trillion rupees if we want to complete our NDC. If we want to achieve our NDC, there is a requirement of investment of $2.5 trillion. That is roughly equal to 50% of the GDP of India. That is roughly equal to 50% of the GDP of India. Okay. So this is one of the part which we require. Okay. Now at the same time, we also aim to have this net zero emission. We also have an aim that we are going to have net zero emission. We have a goal of having net zero emission by 2070. We require a net zero emission by 2070. This one requires near about $10.1 trillion. There is a requirement of $10.1 trillion in order to achieve this. Okay. In order to achieve this, you can see, in order to achieve our nationally determined contribution, we need a spending, we need a funding of near about $2.5 trillion. We need a funding of $2.5 trillion. And in order to achieve the net zero emission by 2070, we have a target of achieving net zero emission by 2070. So in order to do that, we require a sum total of near about $10.1 trillion. So climate adaptation is not a simple task. It requires huge amount of investment. It requires huge amount of investment. Okay. Now, when we talk about this investment part, so we have to see this one thing, like what about the the developed countries? Are they providing the funds? The developed countries, if we look at this, we see that are they providing the fund? Okay. So what we see that the developed countries they have promised like they have got this promised $100 billion at Paris summit. Now we have seen that new collective quantified goals, this says that $300 billion, it says 300 billion by 2035. So what we see that initially they have given a promise. They have promised $100 billion at Paris summit. This is something which has failed. This is something which has failed. Now this one is the new promise. This one is the new promise. Developed nations, they have made a promise. Developed nations, they have made a promise, first of all in 2015, that they are going to provide $100 billion annually for developing nations. $100 billion annually for the developing nations. And at the same time, when this has failed, now they have come up with a new target, a new promise, a new goal, that now it is going to be $300 billion by 2035 annually. Annually $300 billion, that is the target. Now what we see, what is the requirement for developing nation? How much do we require? Like this is one part of a story, but how much do we require? How much is the requirement by the developing countries? This is the promise, but how much is the requirement? The requirement is 5 to 6 trillion dollar. 5 to 6 trillion by 2030. There is a requirement of 5 to 6 trillion dollar by 2030. But we see that this is something which is not simply possible. Okay. This is something which is not simply possible. Okay. So this is one of the part which has been said here. Okay. That when we are talking about the climate finance right now, we have seen how much is the requirement, and at the international level, what has been the promise and what has been the result. This is one side of the story, that how much climate finance is needed, how much has been provided by the developed nations towards the developing nation. This is one side of a story. Okay. Now we are going to talk especially about India. That with respect to India, when we are talking about India, so what has been our national policies? That it is all about international, but what is our national policy? Are we having some funds? Dedicated towards? Are we having some funds which are dedicated towards environment? So here you will find that, like the RBI. Okay, sorry. If we look at this in 2024 itself, what we see that in 2024, what we see that we are having 55.9 billion. This is something, a bond, or you can say that a debt which has been raised in India. Okay, this much of green debt has been raised in India. Try to understand that what is the meaning of it. By the end of 2024, you may be aware about this, that banks are giving loans. The banks are giving loans for multiple projects. So there are certain green projects also. There are climate friendly projects also. So what we see that in our country, the green projects or the climate friendly projects, they are now getting investment. They are now getting loans from the bank. We have a debt of near about $55.9 billion by the end of 2024 towards the green funding or towards the green investments. So it means it is increasing. As compared to 2021, this has increased by 186%. 2021 to 2024, what we see that rise of green debt by 186%. So what we see that like this is the sovereign. If we talk about the sovereign green bonds, the value is something around $477 billion. Okay. We see that we have got some of the very prominent funding in India from the banking sector, from the sovereign green fund also. So we are having the banks which are lending the green projects, the government which is coming with the green bonds. The government is also coming with green bonds. So both these things are there, which we see here. Okay. Now, if we look at this at the same time, what we see that like in the case of priority sector lending, we see that like priority sector lending is one part where we are having investment toward green bonds, or sorry, investment toward green funds are recognized under priority sector lending of the banks. Okay, so you may be aware about this, that the banks are having priority sector lending. Banks are having priority sector lending almost 40%. Banks are having a priority sector lending of 40%, and we see that green projects are part of it. Green projects are allowed in priority sector lending. Green projects are allowed in priority sector lending. So we see that, first of all, if we talk about financing in India, there is a figure which shows that we are having higher growth of investment in this. Sovereign green fund is also higher, plus it has also been included as part of priority sector lending. जैसे अगर हम इसको एग्जांपल से डिस्कस करें, सपोज nowadays if you need a solar power plant if you need a solar rooftop installation, अगर आज के समय में हमको सोलर रूफटॉप इंस्टॉलेशन कराना है, you are getting some subsidy also, and if you want you can easily avail loan from the bank also for solar projects. If you have to get loan from banks also, you can get it easily for the solar projects or climate friendly projects. So many of these projects are also being financed by the banks. Why it is being financed? Because it comes under the priority sector. The bank have to use 40% of their fund for priority sector. So this is one of the part where it is beneficial. Now here the thing is that despite all these things, we can see this one part, that the requirement which is there, plus at the same time the resources which we are having is not sufficient enough. The requirement and the supply, there is a mismatch between that. We have a requirement in trillions, but our supply is just in a few billions. हमारा जो supply हो billions में है. So what do we need to do then? Okay, how can we ensure that they will stick to their words, although they know India is lacking in investment funding related sector? Developed nations are not going to do that. This is the reality. As soon as we accept it, it will be much more better. Developed nations are not going to fund the developing nations anymore. That time, that phase is over. They are not going to fund anymore. Okay. Now, see this one thing. So when we are talking about India, we see that there is a huge investment requirement. Okay. There is a huge investment requirement in steel, in cement, in power, road transport. They are going to require around 467 billion. Okay. So there is a huge requirement here. We see that the requirement is high. So now in this case, that what is our solution? What is the solution? Okay. We have 4 different solutions which has been proposed here. This is the first part. Okay. That we need to first define this properly. We need to have climate finance taxonomy. We need to define first what is green. We need to define this one thing, that what is green and what is sustainable. Like suppose if we want financing for the green project, we must be aware about this, that what exactly is green and what exactly is sustainable. If we are having the idea about it, if we are having the knowledge about it, then the financing will become quite simpler. Okay. So we need to have a clear definition of this, that what is green, what is sustainable. Then we also see that this is something which can help in preventing greenwashing. It will give certainty to the investors. It will improve the international credibility. Okay. So right now the finance ministry is developing this one part. It has not been developed yet, but yes, the finance ministry is developing this one part, that we are going to have a clear taxonomy of what is green, what is sustainable. Now the second part here is we need to have a strong RBI regulation. Okay. So right now RBI has recognized green activities under PSL. Okay. Now here it is being said that this author is saying this, that it must differentiate capital requirement for green versus polluting sector. Okay. So there are suppose two different projects. There are two different projects which are coming up. One which is harmful to the environment, one which is good for the environment. So RBI need to make a difference between that. RBI should like make a rule for this, that if there is a green project, how much funding will be given for that. If there is a project which is harmful to the environment, then how much funding can be given for that. Okay. So there is a need to differentiate between that. We have to also conduct climate stress testing of banks and make climate risk assessment mandatory. Okay. So we need to also make sure that climate risk assessment becomes mandatory before funding any project. अगर कोई भी project को fund किया जा रहा है, if there is funding of any of the project, then what is the climate risk because of that project? What is the climate risk involved there? We have to also like examine that. So here the article is suggesting this one part, that now when we are here in a situation where we need to promote more and more green technology, clean technology, so we need to change our policy. We need to change our policy. We need to adopt more and more of those policies which are useful for environment. We need to disincentivize those policies or those projects which are harmful for the environment. Okay. So this is the second part which has been discussed here. Now the third part. See, third part is being saying that the government alone cannot do this. Government alone cannot do this. So we need to have blending of finance. We need public money, philanthropic capital and private investment. Okay. So we cannot do it unilaterally just by the government. Government अकेले नहीं कर सकती. So we need the monies of the philanthropist. We need the money of government. We need the money of private sector. So if all of them are investing, in a project, then it is going to be much more better. Like suppose that if we are having a public guarantee of $100 million, it might also attract a huge amount of private investment. Okay. So this can be used for all the green projects, solar energy, green hydrogen, offshore energy, etc., etc. So if government is also motivating, if government is also giving some initial capital requirement, it can help the private sector also to get the confidence and start investing in green projects. So public, private plus philanthropic, all these three, if they come together, if they start working together, then environmental finance can be made easier in India. Okay. Then we also see there is one more part which has been suggested, that it cannot be done always just by the union government. The state also need to come forward. The state also need to come forward for climate finance. Okay. So what we see that climate adaptation projects, they are something which is largely implemented by the states. Okay. Like suppose if we talk about coastal protection, drought proofing, Himalayan ecosystem restoration, they are all which are carried out by the states. Okay. So what we see that the states, they are lacking this borrowing capacity. They cannot access the climate finance from the international bodies. So we need certain reform here also. We need to have some reform here also, so that states can borrow some money for climate finance at least. That if they are financing some green projects, they should be able to get cheap investment from international level, from international bodies. So what we see that we need to change our policies. Clear definition. What was one part? Clear definition. Second part was what? The RBI, it should define the green projects. It should make difference between green and like the environment harmful projects. Third thing, we need a mix of money, public, private and philanthropic. And fourth, state should also be empowered, state should also be allowed to raise climate finance. Okay. तो आपको ये पार्ट समझ में आया होगा कि why do we need the climate finance. ठीक है, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल the current situation, then I think you might be able to understand the requirement. Then the third part, the solution. Why do we need the climate finance? Why do we need the climate finance? At the same time, what is the requirement? What is the current status? And what can be the solution for this? Okay. So why does the government allow those kind of projects which are harming the environment? See, we are living in such a phase of our development where we need to balance many things. हमें कई चीजों को बैलेंस करने की आवश्यकता होती है. We are not a developed nation which can focus just on the environment. We have to focus on our economic growth also. We have to focus on our export also. We have to focus on employment also. We have to focus on all these factors. So we cannot just focus only on the environment. We cannot focus only on the environment. We need to make a balance between different sectors. So sometimes it is required for us. Sometimes it is simply required for us given our condition, given our level of development. Okay. Now, coming to the second part. Okay. Coming to the second part. A framework for climate and development. Okay. A framework for climate and development. Okay. So now this second article, what it is talking about. The second article is talking about this one part, that this economy or development and environment are not opposed to each other. It is simply saying this one part, that development and this environment, they are not opposed to each other. Rather than that, if we are focusing on environmental projects, it can be in fact more and more beneficial for the environment also, plus at the same time it can be useful for the it can be useful even for our development as well. So this is one thing which has been discussed by this one article. So let us see this one by one. Okay. So let us see this one by one. Okay. Now here there are certain examples which has been quoted. Okay. Like every year we see that fossil fuel combustion, this accounts for 0.95 million premature death in India. Okay. Extreme heat, it is also costing around loss of 247 billion working hours in 2024 alone. Okay. So now we see that on one side we are having coal based power plant. This is something which is creating pollution. Now, if we replace this, if we are replacing this with solar energy, it will provide energy also. It is something which is environment friendly also. And this is something which creates employment also. So here we see that it provided a carbon return, a health return, and a productivity return simultaneously. If we are not using coal, if we are using solar power plant, then we are not going to face these challenges. We are not going to have so many of premature deaths. 9,50,000 deaths annually. If we are having 9.5 lakh death, 9.5 lakh death annually, so we need to re-examine our policies. At the same time, what we see that there is loss of working hours also. Why? Because of climate change, because of the policies which we are adopting. So if we are adopting a climate friendly policy, these problems can also be over. Okay. These problems can also be reduced. Now at the same time, what we see that our renewable sector, this can generate 3.4 million jobs. Okay. Our renewable sector can create 3.4 million jobs by 2030. Now it is not only job, what we see that better livelihood outcome will also be there. Health outcome will also be there. Okay. There will be a poverty reduction outcome also there. Okay. So poverty will also come down, livelihood or income will increase. We see that health will also be better. If there are two people, one who is working in a coal based thermal power plant and one person who is there for solar power plant or solar area or solar installation, you can understand that the person who is engaged in solar installation is having lesser risk, is having lesser impact on health. So this is one of the part that there is a better income also, poverty reduction also, and health outcomes are also much more better. Okay. Then at the same time, if we look at this, like suppose that how this is going to be beneficial. Here an example has been discussed. Like suppose that we have a Kolhapur cluster. This is one of the most concentrated agglomeration of small manufacturing units. Here we are having multiple smaller industries. Which are dealing with respect to cast iron. Means they are in iron and steel industry. Here we have an example of a small cluster where we have got a huge number of iron and steel industries, smaller industries. Now it is being said that if we are replacing the thermal grid electricity, if we are replacing the coal based electricity with renewables, अगर हम यहां पे चेंज कर दे कि वी आर नॉट सप्लाइंग फ्रॉम कोल, वी आर सप्लाइंग फ्रॉम रिन्यूएबल्स, तो इन दिस सिचुएशन वी सी दैट देयर विल बी हायर कॉस्ट ऑफ कार्बन कंप्लायंस, देयर विल बी नो सच challenge because of European Union carbon border adjustment mechanism, there will be no such impact of US tariff also. हमें यह देखने को मिलता है कि some countries are imposing tariff because of environmental factor, they are having carbon taxation, they are having different taxations. So if we are using a renewable source of energy, then our challenges like these can be over. If we are changing it to any such, like solar power plants or other things, then all these problems can also be over. So health outcome, income, our export, all these things can get better if we are using green energy. So the entire part of carbon border adjustment mechanism, the one major challenge for India, suppose if we are using renewable sources of energy, if we are using clean sources of energy, then we would not have to worry about the CBAM at all. अगर हमारे यहाँ clean energy से industries काम करती, तो do we need to worry about this? Do we need to worry about this carbon border adjustment mechanism? The answer is no. Okay. We don't have to worry about the additional tariff. Okay. So this is one thing which we have to understand. Okay. Now, here we see that in case of, we have another example. In the cotton belt of Maharashtra, if we are having a biocharcoal program, if we are having a charcoal program which can benefit 10 lakh farmers, okay, so we see that it can help in soil amendment, it can help in yield improvement, it can help in reduced fertilizer dependence and lower pest pressure. Okay, nowadays we are using chemical fertilizers, we are using so much of chemical fertilizers. If we are replacing this with biocharcoal, it can help in doing all these things. Income uplift of 85,000, soil amendment, yield improvement, reduced fertilizer dependence, lower pest pressure. Okay. And at the same time, 1.45 million tons of carbon dioxide, this will also be removed. So if we are changing our policies, if we are changing the approach, in case of agriculture, in case of transport, in case of our steel sector, in case of our industries, a lot of benefit can be there, a lot of related benefits can be there. In fact, environment friendly projects are not antithetical to development, they are in fact very much required. They are in fact very much required for the sustainable development. They are in fact very much important for the sustainable development. So I hope ये पार्ट भी आपको क्लियर है. Here we have got some good case studies, some good examples. तो इसका आप यूज कर सकते हो कि हाउ एनवायरमेंट इज नॉट अगेंस्ट द डेवलपमेंट, एनवायरमेंट इज समथिंग विच फेवर्स द डेवलपमेंट. तो पहला पार्ट हमने देखा द नीड ऑफ क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस. द सेकेंड पार्ट वी हैव सीन इज दैट द क्लाइमेट and development are not antithetical to each other. They are in fact complementary to each other. They can in fact help each other. So I hope this second part is also clear. तो देखो इसके बेसिस पे मैं आपको एक क्वेश्चन दे रहा हूं. India's climate future depends less on finding new money and more on creating institutions and policies that can mobilize and deploy trillions of dollars towards green development and climate resilience. Discuss. Yes, Anjali, definitely a lot of blessings for you. So here also you have to write this one thing in 150 words. तो एक क्वेश्चन है जिसको आपको यहां पे लिखना है. And now coming to the first question. Discuss the merits and demerits of judicial holidays in India. कितने लोगों ने इसका आंसर लिखा है? How many of you have written answer for this? Written answer. How much time you have taken? How many words you have written? Anjali, I think your exam is going on, so yes, you can focus on your paper. So I want to know about this one part. 10 minute, 275 words. Okay. 14 minutes. So when we talk about this one thing, first of all, we have to write the introduction. See, this is quite simple question. This is quite simple question. First of all, we will write the introduction. In the introduction, we can explain the context. We can explain the context. By Indian higher judiciary is going on holidays. The Indian higher judiciary is going on holidays for around 65 to 70 days in 1 year. And at the same time, there are around 5.5 crore cases pending in judiciary in India. And at least 65 lakh cases which are pending in the higher judiciary also. Near about 1 lakh cases are pending in Supreme Court alone. So now this is one part. You can give the context. Hereafter you can mention about the merits or demerits, whatever you want. What if you want the merits of it, you want the demerit of it, you can write it one by one. So last day we have seen why this is required. Why this is required? you can go in detail about it. You can write it point by point, why this is required for writing oral, for reading of the different thesis, for reading of the judgments, for writing the judgments. So all these things you can mention that why this is required, why it is essential. Second thing you can also mention is the demerits, the challenges. The challenges. Last day we have seen 7 to 8 challenges also. हम लोगों ने इसका दोनों पार्ट देखा था कि we have seen what are the merits of it, what are the demerits of it, what are the challenges also due to this holidays. So try to write the better word challenges. यहां पे भले ही क्वेश्चन में demerit लिखा है, but you should try to write challenges rather than demerits. You should write challenges rather than demerits. तो क्वेश्चन में चाहे कुछ भी लिखा हो, आप अपनी वर्ड्स में उसको थोड़ा मॉडिफाई कर सकते हैं. Okay. So this is one part, merit, challenges. Okay. Then you can see some global example. Then you can mention the way forward. Okay. And then you can write the conclusion. Then you can write the conclusion. और देखो कंक्लूजन में हमें सिर्फ इस पे फोकस नहीं करना कि देयर शुड बी हॉलीडे और नॉट. इन कंक्लूजन वी नीड टू एग्जामिन द बिगर इशू. द बिगर इशू इज द जस्टिस गेटिंग डिलेड. The justice getting delayed. So we need a reform in the entire judicial system rather than focusing just on the part whether there should be a holiday in the judiciary or not. Okay. तो हमें यहां पे इस बात पे गौर करना है कि in the conclusion we have to focus not just on this one simple or narrow part कि whether there should be holidays in judiciary or not. We need to focus on this one part, that what is the larger issue. The larger issue is the pendency of cases and justice getting delayed. So when justice is delayed, it is equivalent to justice being denied. So we need to address this one part, that in the present phase with huge pendency of cases, there is a need to focus on ensuring timely justice for the citizens of the nation. We need a comprehensive reform in the judiciary as well as the judicial process as well as the investigative process in order to provide the justice to the people. Okay. कि हमें मेनली क्या करना है कि जस्टिस देना है, एंड फॉर दैट वी नीड अ कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव रिफॉर्म, not just in judiciary but in investigation also, in evidence also, in processes also. So legal and institutional changes, that is something which we require. You have to mention point regarding this in the way forward. You have to mention about what reforms are necessary. What reforms are necessary with respect to this one part, that should there be holidays or not, holidays होना चाहिए या नहीं. So you can mention some reforms here कि what can be alternative. This is suppose that there is a very important demand which has been going on for some time. कुछ दिनों पहले भी हम लोगों ने पढ़ा था about this, that we need to have different category of benches. There can be some constitutional benches, there can be some regular benches. Regular benches can hear the regular matters. The constitutional benches will examine the constitutional cases. तो ज्यादा टाइम कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बेंचेज को लगता है, रेगुलर बेंचेज रिक्वायर लेसर अमाउंट ऑफ टाइम. So there can be two different parts of benches, a regular bench, a constitutional bench. So regular bench will be hearing the general matters, the appeals and everything. Whereas the constitutional bench, 3 or 4 constitutional benches can be there, which can be hearing constitutional cases, and some regular benches. So we need to increase the number of judges also in the Supreme Court. तो दिस इज वन पार्ट विच यू कैन मेंशन अंडर द रिफॉर्म्स कि क्या क्या रिफॉर्म, क्या वे फॉरवर्ड करने की जरूरत है. आई होप दैट इज क्लियर. एनी डाउट, एनी कंफ्यूजन, एनी क्वेश्चन? तो नेक्स्ट वी विल मीट ऑन मंडे. नहीं, you need to focus on both math as well as comprehension. See, over the last 3 to 4 years, UPSC has given us this one experience. You cannot focus on just one part. You need to be focused on all the segments. So just do keep this one thing in mind. You cannot be focused on just one part. Focus on all others. Okay. It's 80%, then also it's quite good. So thank you everyone. Take care. All the best, and let's meet on Monday.